Hi everybody. So we are still moving through Mark. Hopefully you guys have been following us. If not, you can check out the previous posts. We're posting every other Thursday. And eventually I'm going to do the website. The website is there. It's just not up and running the way that it should. The whole of life. And that's what we're doing. We're trying to change our whole of life. So we're bringing you the gospel in a very simplistic manner. For those of you who don't really understand it, we're trying to just kind of walk you through baby steps. And at the same time, we're incorporating that with our physical health. So it's important that we address the physical and the spiritual health, as well as the mental health, which we do in another segment. So last week we were talking about change, and we talked about the beginning and how you move through that. Today we're talking about making that decision. So we're still in the first chapter. Mark is a very quick moving gospel. It's the gospel that teaches you how to be a servant. It's very action packed. It focuses on the doing part, the discipleship. And so that's why we chose Mark to come to you as a beginning to begin to understand what our role is as a Christian. As we declared that we're Christians, how many of us can be identified by our Christian walk? And so right now, Jesus is making that decision. So now we're beginning to get to the actual ministry work, which is very cool that we get to that in the first chapter in the Gospel of Mark. The other Gospels, we don't get to it. They go through the genealogy, they go through a lot of things. Mark dives right in, and so before we get to the middle of the first chapter, it's John baptizes Jesus. So picking up from a couple of weeks ago, we're starting at the 9th verse and just doing 3 verses today, 9 through 11. And it reads the New King James Version. It came to pass in those days that Jesus came from Nazareth of Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan. And immediately coming up from the water, he saw the heavens parting and the Spirit descending upon him like a dove. Then a voice came from heaven, "You are my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." Now, we're not going to get into the technical piece. There are a couple of different variations of that, and it's important to know what the correct variation was, because God was speaking to Jesus. This wasn't to the audience that was standing there watching people be baptized. And so, this particular section is very interesting because it has puzzled a lot of people. Every time someone preaches about it, that's what they're going to talk about, is that there are a lot of different variations, and a lot of people wonder why this is here. To understand or begin to understand that, we have to understand what was happening at the time. And so just a little bit from last week, what we're talking about is John the Baptist. John the Baptist being known as the forerunner. John the Baptist, the one that precedes the coming of the Messiah. John the Baptist getting the people ready for the coming of the Son of God. So John the Baptist was different. We talked about that 2 weeks ago. He was out in the wilderness. He wore Campbell hair. He only ate locusts and honey. And so what else was it that John was doing? John's main purpose was to prepare people for the Messiah, to prepare people for what Jesus was coming to do. And what was Jesus coming to do? Jesus was coming to return men back to God. And so John's whole thing is that you know the sin that's within you. Confess of your sins, repent, and be baptized. That was his whole message. And so if that was John's message, that you know the sin that's in you, repent, and be baptized, why was Jesus being baptized? If Jesus is who we say he is, came down, wrapped himself in the womb of the Virgin Mary, he is here in the flesh, but not just as a human being. We know that this is our claim, that he is fully God and fully man when he walked upon the earth. Now, being fully God means that there was no sin in him. We know that because that's our salvation. Because he was the perfect sacrificial lamb, the one without any blemish, the one without sin. That is why he was able to take on our sin. So then, if the message is repent and be baptized, why is Jesus being baptized? So that's the thing that has had people thinking. That's the thing that brings up all the conversation. And it's really quite simple. The simple thing is just as in the scripture but the segue that I've written there for you is, What are you waiting to make a decision about? Where are we in life? You're never going to get anywhere in life if you just muddle through life. You've got to have a distance. You've got to have a destiny. You have to have, an endpoint to this journey that we're on. And so a lot of times we talk about the ministry of Jesus right here in the very first chapter of the Gospel of Mark. We're about to dive into his ministry. There's a lot going on in the Gospel of Matthew in terms of the genealogy, where he came from, the baby in the manger, getting the child out of Galilee from King Herod, trying to have all the children, the male boys, killed. A lot of that goes on, and then it jumps into the ministry. But Jesus gets into his ministry, gets down in this water when he's 30 years old. So what happened in the previous 30 years? And so there's the assumption, the assumption, but it's a good assumption because we have to pay attention to that for wherever we are in life. How do we get to a point where we're going to get to what we not consider to be our final destination or our ultimate goal, but that thing that we were created to do inside of each of us? There are people that you just sit at their feet, and I talk about Minister Barnett, I talk about Minister Deontay Gray, I talk about Pastor Streeter, talk about Bishop Leonard Smith that just recently passed. People that are just doing what they were born to do, and you know it because you just feel it in their presence when they're doing what they're doing. And that thing is in all of us. And so Jesus knew what his purpose was. He knew why he had to come and walk upon the earth. The thing is that didn't start taking place until he was 30 years old. And so what was he doing up until the time he was 30 years old? We hear the only real glimpse we get of him as a child is when he was in the synagogue with the elders, speaking and learning and teaching. And he told his mother, who was concerned about him, aren't I supposed to be about my father's business? So he known all along. But from that period, from he was a young boy until he was 30 years old, we knew him as Jesus the carpenter. He was Joseph's son, but we don't hear a lot about Joseph after the escape. So we can only assume that Joseph passed away. And they talk about Mary's son. The way they talk about Mary's son is in a manner that the father must no longer be alive. And so the carpenter that we think of today, just, hammerjack something. No, the carpenter of that time was the one that was building houses, the one that was building ships, the one that was building furniture and everything in between. And so to know Jesus being Mary's son with his siblings, with the father gone, someone taking care of the household, but also taking care of all of the problems of all of the people. Remember, we're talking back in the day. We're not talking about where you can get a home improvement loan and things like that. So when something goes down, when somebody's house, sinks on sinking sand or whatever the case may be, they're coming to the carpenter. Hey, can you do this for me? They probably don't have the funds to have it done. So it tells you about when God puts us in charge of something. And when we do it well, everybody comes to us. It's the person that is always giving. It's the person that is always needed, so to speak. The carpenter. The carpenter is the one that every single person in town needs on several occasions. Most times they're unable to pay him. Most times the level of gratitude doesn't exist. And so this gives you a very unique picture into the insight of what Jesus was dealing with before he actually started his ministry work. And it's important for you and I to remember, because a lot of times we have these grandiose ideas and goals in life, and we wonder why they're not happening, why things aren't moving, why aren't things clicking, why aren't my prayers being answered. But look at the Son of God. The Son of God that could do anything and everything had to be put into this position to basically be everything to everybody, not only his family, but the entire town, and probably do that in a manner that usually people like that are the people that are the least appreciated, though they are the most utilized, if that makes any sense to you. And dealing with that, you have to, you create a certain type of character, that character of humility, that character that is seeking something beyond people. It's the ability to rise consciously above your immediate surroundings. And I'm going a little more into detail with this because we're in the middle of a pandemic, And during the pandemic, a lot of people have had to do a lot more than they probably typically would have done for an elderly parent, for a neighbor. A lot of people have been, it takes a psychological hold on you, especially the older people that aren't able to get out to their bridge club or their senior Bible study. And they're depending a little more on us. And your response in a time like this, when you're already frustrated because of everything that's happening with your profession, and maybe you've lost some hours, maybe you've lost, a lot of people that were business owners, everything has gone. So it's how do we deal with things like that in life? And so we take a page out of Jesus's life and we see that there's a level of humility that has to take place, but dealing with everybody pulling at you, everyone needing you, and doing so in a manner where they're the most unappreciative people. I always tell people, I think the greatest sin is the sin of ingratitude. I deal with it all the time. You get to a point where you are able to really understand who you are and whose you are, and that whatever that thing is, that talent, that gift that you are able to give to others is simply because God has anointed you with that, and He has a purpose for you in that. So you have to transcend your thinking from thinking that you're serving the people. Yes, you're doing that, but ultimately it's all about what you're doing for God in a spirit of excellence. Our chief mean to life is to live, to glorify God, so that we may enjoy Him forever in eternity. And that's what Jesus had a lock on. And He did that, and He did it very well. But think about this. The whole time that He's doing that, He knew the bigger picture. You and I will never know what that bigger picture is. We can only assume what that bigger picture is going to be. But Jesus knew what His purpose was. But yet His humility, His obedience to God, to just remain in that position, to tarry. I tell people a lot of times, if you have to ask a million people whether or not you should do something, if you're losing a lot of sleep about a decision, then tarry. Just remain in the situation that you're in, and sooner or later, hopefully, if you're walking with God, if you're in prayer on a regular basis, if you're being obedient in the things that you know you ought to be doing, it will become very clear. And when it becomes clear, there's no hesitation, there's no advice seeking from anyone. You just go forward and you start to make the decision that now is the time. This is when Jesus decided that this is the time when John the Baptist came along and he was saying, repent, be baptized. Jesus says, now is the time. Now is the time. And so here you have something that is unprecedented in history, because never had a Jew. Now Jesus, a lot of people may not have recognized Him as the Son of God or the man to be, but Jesus knew, being known in the town, He was a Jew. Everybody, Jesus the Jew, the son of Mary. And never in history had a Jew been baptized. Why? The Jew was the chosen people, the son of Abraham. There's no need for us to be baptized. Their thinking is, our salvation is predicated on who we are, the chosen people, the son of Abraham. And so never had that been done. The only people that were being baptized were those who were other than the non-Jews that were coming into Judaism. So here you have something that's being astonishing in and of itself. So now Jesus is identifying with the thing that He wants to come and save man from. He wants to bring man to God. And so the best way to do that is to identify yourself with the example that you're setting forth. And so in doing this, He gets out of this scripture here, we have two famous quotes. When the voice comes from heaven, it says, "You are my beloved Son," 1, and then 2, "in whom I am well pleased." Now all of the Jews and everybody at that time knew that the coming Messiah, the coming servant of the Lord, from Psalm, I think it's 2:7, it says, "This is my Son." So that voice that Jesus was hearing was saying that, yes, I am the chosen one. Here's the confirmation. Here's the time that I think is a great time. And then later when it says that this is my well-pleased Son, that comes from Isaiah 42. So that's the destiny. Here you are doing what you're supposed to be doing, but you're not going to do it as the conquering king. The way to do it is going to be the cross. So as Jesus is here, He knows that this is the thing that He has to do, but it's not going to be an easy thing. You and I are going to be faced with things that we know we have to do, and the journey is not going to look easy. The journey is not going to look like something at times that's even achievable. but we do the same thing that he did. He made the decision that now this is the time. But then there's the decision of, even though he knows what the destiny is, knows what needs to happen, there's a vision, but how is it going to be done? That wasn't clearly defined for him. And that's when we're going to be moving into how he starts his campaign, how he picks the people around him, the circle of the people around him, how he's going to go about getting this message to the ends of the earth. So this is very important to just see right here what we do when we start to do things. Everybody has a vision. Everybody has a goal. Everybody wants something. And at some point, you've got to say, I'm going to stop daydreaming about that. I'm going to stop thinking, contemplating, talking about it, and I'm going to make that a reality. Now, that doesn't happen automatically. We need to stop looking at a lot of these reality TV shows. Nothing happens like that. Nothing happens overnight. Nothing happens by chance. There has to be a plan, and you have to think it through as you're beginning to move into it. So it's kind of tricky because you move on the decision that now is the time, but in doing so simultaneously, you start putting your little dots in a row. And that's why this verse is very important. It's just 3 little things here, but we wanted to just say that because there's a time that you're going to have to make that decision, and Jesus knew it was the right time, and he did it, and he knew that it was the right time because he got approval by immediately hearing the voice of God. Now think about it. It came and it descended like a dove. A dove is here just like that, and then it's gone. So you have to be in the position to make sure that you are hearing God, and you put yourself in a position to hear him, like that descending dove comes and goes. Sometimes we're just all over the map doing a lot of things that have nothing to do with hearing God speak to us. And so allocating that perfect time in the morning, whether it's early in the morning, I say early in the morning because we use Jesus as a perfect example on a regular basis. And it says, even though he knew what he was here to do, he knew when he was getting ready to do it, he still got up early in the morning to go and spend time with the Father. And so that's those 2 verses we just want to talk about, is that there was a time that Jesus was here for 30 years before he moved into his ministry work. The real important piece of that to understand is that he had these things to do, and I don't think that they were minor things, because caring for a household, your siblings, taking care of the needs of the community, those are big things, but they kneel in comparison to the ultimate thing that he was here to do. And so, to whom much is given, much is required. And in that, God still needs to test us to make sure that we're going to be responsible for those small things in life. Taking care of the little things. Sometimes we want to be, the CEO, but we don't want to know basic accounting principles. You've got to do these little things. You got to learn how to deal with people. You've got to have a personality that, makes adjustments, that can be flexible with things. And so God does that. He puts things and opportunities in front of us so that we can learn how to deal with things at this level, so that when we get to this level, we're able to deal with it because of the experience we've had at the lower level. So, as I said, we're taking you through who Jesus was, how we are to be more like him. And so what did Jesus do? Waited for the perfect time. Waited, not just waited, but patiently waited, but also was doing great things at the time that he was waiting. Yes, we want great things to happen. Yes, we have big, visions and things like that. But in the meantime, we have to move. Waiting and being patient is not an inactive thing. It's not passive. We're going to still be doing things, enjoying the journey, being successful along the way. Do you know what I mean? So even if nothing else happens, even if True Pop Popcorn doesn't get to the $10 million, a month business that we think it's going to be, we've done some good things at this level. And that's very important, because our days are numbered and you don't know when your time is coming in. So the thing is what is it that you're doing right now that's making a difference? And every day of our lives should make a difference. And if we stick with that royal command of making sure that we treat others as ourselves, then the days will bring us so many opportunities to help others and to do things for others that becomes, just automatic. And so speaking on that, I'm going to transition here to, taking care of ourselves. Because one thing about Jesus and being ready to do what needed to be done was that he was physically fit and able to do that. How can we assume that? Because if you've ever gone to Egypt and you've seen the some of the temples that are still in place, and you just look at the landscape, the walking that he had to do just on a daily basis would kill most of us. And so just, understanding things like that. So how do we prepare ourselves? I always tell people, and that's why we're broadcasting from the kitchen, because we live and die at the cellular level. And that's going to be predicated on what we're feeding our bodies and feeding ourselves. The minerals have to come from good foods, and the best source of them are going to come from live and raw foods, and keep those intact. So while I was helping others earlier this week, I had to present to L3 Harris. And one of the things that we were talking about is just, the basics of the functionality of our organs, what happens with the elimination channels that determines our state of health. How well are our elimination channels functioning? The colon, the kidneys, the lungs, the skin, and the liver. When those are functioning properly, you can pretty much say that you're in a good state of health. When they're not functioning properly, you're not in a good state of health. And so we talked about the things that you need to know in terms of recognizing whether or not that functionality of that particular organ is where it ought to be. And when it's not where it ought to be, what do you need to do? And so some of the basic things that we talked about, I'm not going to go over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of keep it in correlation with what we're talking about. How do we get from where we have a vision or a dream about something to a point where we're making that a reality? And so I'm going to assume that most of us want to be well. If nothing else that we've realized in the last 18 months is that you really need to be well, and when you're not well, it always just makes a bad situation exponentially worse. And so how do we get well? What well looks like to you, I don't know, but I know that the path to get there is pretty much the same in most cases. And that's again because of the understanding of the biochemistry makeup of the body and some things that have to take place. Nutrition is the key to everything. A lot of times for most sicknesses and diseases, I tell people that if something is going wrong, if there's a disease, that's an imbalance in the body. And that's a direct result, typically, of some type of nutritional deficiency or an abundance of a nutrient. And that typically is never the case. Almost never are we going to get too much of anything. Because once we start consuming certain things, just like when you eat sugar, sugar depletes the body of calcium. So there's so many things that we do that take us away from maintaining those levels that we ought to have. And so, as most of us think, I want to be healthier, whether that looks like I want to reverse the disease or illness that I have, which most of them are reversible, whether that looks like I want to put myself in an excellent state to be able to really minimize my risk of getting an illness or disease, whether I want to lose weight, whether I want my skin to clear up, whatever it is, you put it out there, and we have to start moving towards that direction. So when Jesus decided, now is the time to start getting out here and start preaching this gospel, start telling people what they need to do, showing people what they need to do. And that's basically what he did. He came and he preached, but he showed the love. He healed the people. His health ministry was right there at the beginning, simultaneously with beginning to preach. He was beginning to heal. And so he couldn't continue to do that in the carpentry shop. And so that's the first stage, is that we have to move from where we are. And that is why we're in a kitchen that doesn't look like the typical kitchen. Well, it doesn't have the things that the typical kitchens have. We get rid of the cabinets because our food processors and our blenders are larger, and they just are hard to get into a cabinet. And the more difficult anything is to do or to get to, we're really not going to do it. So you need to have things where they're accessible, they're easy to get to. That's the first thing, is the layout of the kitchen. We'll talk about that at another time. What I want to talk about today, because we've been talking over the last few periods that we've met, about getting some basic things in place. having fruits and vegetables in your home on a regular basis. And so, as Jesus said, I'm going to start this, as we're thinking I'm going to go from an unhealthy state to a healthy state. I'm going to go from not feeling well to feeling great. I'm going to go from not being well to being well. We have to start cleansing. And so I was telling someone on yesterday that a lot of times the problem is that we start doing things for rejuvenation, but we've never done the detoxification piece. And that should be done through juice fasting. That is probably the only, not just the quickest, but the only effective way to bring the cellular structure back to where it needs to be is through juice fasting. And that's because then we're going to bypass the dysfunctionality of our gastrointestinal system, which is usually not functioning properly if there's any kind of sickness or unwellness in the body, so to speak. And so that's one thing, but since most of us are not going to immediately do that, what I want to do, because I shared what I was eating the other day on the internet, and people are like, yummy, so I'm like, okay, so if you like the way that look, let me just show you how to put it together, because it incorporates a lot of things that we need to start initially doing in order to be well. It's a simple recipe. It's a simple thing to do. Simplicity, again, is going to be predicated on what you have available to you. And so we want to make sure that we always have fresh fruits, nuts, seeds, and grains, possibly, at most times. But that's what I talked about on yesterday. I talked about when we talk about the colon, the elimination channel of the colon, one of the highest things that we have to focus on are fiber. It's the fiber content. We have dietary fiber, we have soluble fiber, insoluble fiber. And I was saying, out of all the things that I told them in the 45 minutes, the one thing that I want them to do on a daily basis, the same things that I do. There's some things that, we check our emails every day. We've got to get to a point where there's some things that we have to do every day. You have to drink half of your body weight in ounces of water every single day. You can't just say, I drank a gallon of water on Monday. Your brain needs 85% of that every single day, not just on Monday or not just on the 3 days out of the week that you did well, but every single day. So there's some things that you just want to do every day. And that, even though we're already a month or so, 2 months into the new year, and I know a lot of people don't get into New Year's resolutions, but at some point too, whether you call it a New Year's resolution or whatever you call it, I don't care whether it's in January, February, or March, at some point we need to take a look at where we are, where we want to be, and start doing some things that are going to strategically get us to that end point. And so in doing that, I always say that, people say, what's the best exercise, Dr. Dallas? What's the best food? What's the best whatever? Everybody wants that magic bullet thing that they're only going to do for a minute anyway. But I tell people there is no magic. The magic is consistency. And so what's the best exercise? The best exercise is the exercise that you're going to consistently do. And if that is only 10 minutes of walking a day, if you do that every single day or 5 days out of the week, you are going to be so much better and further off than that person that runs 10 miles, during that 3-week period where the weather is just absolutely perfect outside. And so we want to get to a point where we say, there are a lot of things that we want to do on a daily basis. There are a lot of things that we need and have to do on a daily basis. But, look at the good, better, and best principle. And I always tell people, yes, we want 5-7 servings of fruits and vegetables, everything. But it's a good thing that we eat some fruit every day. Yes, we want half of our body weight in water, but it's a good thing that we consistently drink some water every day. It's going to be better when we get to a point where we're getting towards that benchmark of the required amount, but it's just doing things consistently, incrementally, until you continue just to elaborate upon that until you've got it down. There have been every year, in December, it's usually for me the end of November, I just kind of take an evaluation of how this year was for me. What would I like to do differently? I remember the time when there was a challenge presented to me to run 1 mile a day for 6 weeks. It was 6 weeks. It was from Memorial Day to the 4th of July. And at that time, my short mile runs were 7 miles. You know, my long mile was 9, 10 miles. And I was doing one or the other 4 times, 5 times a week. So when they were like, do 1 mile a day, I was like, wow, this is easy. This is a piece of cake, you know. But the thing is when you're doing 7 miles or you're doing 9 miles, if you decide that you want to take 2 days off, you can do that. If it's pouring down raining outside, you don't have to lace up. But the challenge of lacing up every single day, even if it was just for a mile, was so difficult the first month. I was just like, the first week it was like, oh, this is cool, I'm done. Really, I can stop running. And instead of running 1 mile, of course the first week I would do at least 3 miles. And then there were days where I was like, am I at a mile yet? Because I so didn't want to do it, because it was just like, wow, is the next day here already? And then days when you look out the window and it is pouring down raining, and it is going to be raining for the next 2 days, or when it's snowing outside. So it was just like really interesting. But as I got to the end of the 6 weeks, because I was determined to do that. Actually, I kind of cheated, because it came in the Runner's Magazine, and they projected us to do this Memorial Day weekend through the 4th of July. I got my magazine May the 1st, so I'm kind of anal like that, so I started. So by the time we actually got to Memorial Day, I had already run for 4 weeks. So I was like, oh, I may as well keep going to the 4th of July. And then as we were approaching the 4th of July, I was like, you know what? I wonder if I can do this for a year. But instead of putting that pressure on me, I'm doing the entire year, I just said, you know what, I'm just going to keep running every day, a mile, and just see what happens. You know, no pressure. I've already done what I'm supposed to do. And I was approaching 9 months, 10 months, and when I got to a year, we were in the middle of the pandemic. And I was like, and then of course the gyms were closed and a whole bunch of other stuff was going on. And I was like, well, you know, I may as well just keep running. And I didn't necessarily say I was going to do 2 years, but I was just going to keep running, and just until I didn't want to run anymore. And sure enough, I did 2 years. And I must say, towards the last month, going into the 2nd year, I was just like, yeah, I'm really getting tired of this. But it was done. And so after you do it, now it was done, 2 years running every single day for a mile. It seems like a lifetime ago. And so imagine how you're going to feel about yourself. You know, tap, tap, tap on the back when you put these goals in front of yourself and you begin to achieve them. And so when you do one, you start thinking that you can do anything. You know, of course, I've been doing things all my life, but, you know, and so I remember years and years ago, I had said, I'm going to make sure that I eat something green every single day. Not something green like, you know, green now laters, but something green in terms of a fruit or a vegetable, but basically dark leafy greens. And just to see the difference that it made in just a month or so, you know, I was just like, wow. So that's been years that I try to do that. This year, my new thing was that, because I love salads, you know, I don't know if I've told you guys specifically that Dallas, spelled backwards, is salad with an extra L, because I love extra leafy greens. But I think that's so cool that my name spelled backwards is salad, and that is just absolutely one of my most favorite things to eat. And though I love to eat salad, I probably would have a salad most days, you know, 5, 6 days out of the week, sometimes, you know, every single day. But then I just said, you know what, I'm going to have a salad every single day. Even on my fasting day, what I typically do is I'll have breakfast and I won't eat anything until after breakfast the next day. So I've switched that around so that even on the fasting, I can fast 24 hours and still have a salad at the conclusion of that. And then I don't know if I do my 40-day fast for Lent, maybe we'll just skip that. But just to do something like that and just keep going, and not only does it give you a sense of accomplishment, but the discipline that you begin to establish begins to just make other things easier. So here's the cereal, because I will be talking all night. So here's the cereal. So I did not cut the banana yet, because I want you to see that we must consume bananas when they're in this state. It should be pretty much 35% brown spots on it. The tip should be extremely dark brown. Most times when you go in the store, most times when you finish running a race, they've got these bananas where the tips are green and they're beautiful yellow. You're never going to see this in the store because it's not attractive. And then after a while, it begins to smell a little bit, and then you get the little fruit flies around it. However, this is what you consider to be a ripe banana. I'll never forget when people were always telling me, I don't like bananas, they make me fat. I'm like, what are they talking about? Well, bananas come in when they're ripe and unripe. In the unripe state, which is when they're perfectly yellow and pretty and they have the green tips, that's considered to be an unripe banana. So the sugar in the unripe banana will do that. You'll hold on to it versus the sugar now is not a simple sugar, but a complex sugar. So this is going to make you lose weight. That's why all the monkeys look pretty good out there, because they eat a lot of ripe bananas. They don't mess around with pulling banana. They're too hard to get off of the tree like that. And so what you want to do is make sure that you're consuming bananas that are ripe. And that's with most things too. You'll notice I always talk about how we'll have fruit here, and then as it begins to ripen, we put it into the windowsill. Now this avocado needs to be consumed. It's getting readily where if I press my finger there, you can really see the indentation. In a second, I'm going to have to refrigerate it if I don't eat it. And so when you know that, that means it's ready to eat. When you eat unripened food, it causes not only the sugar content to cause bloating with you, but it also makes you sick. So what we're going to do is slice up the banana. This is basically... the cereal is pretty decent. I call it a cereal, but you can have it as a snack, really, as a dessert in the evening. It has a really wonderful taste. I'm going to show you a couple of tricks that you can do to make it even better. So you can start with a banana. This is a very small bowl. I usually have a very large bowl. And then you can take a cup to 2 cups of fresh berries for a variety of reasons for the color. So red foods are what we consider to be arterial stimulants. They're going to move your blood. When the body is not well, the first thing your doctor is going to do is to get some blood work done, because that's what determines how well you are, is what you have. I call it the trash can. What's in the trash can? So green foods actually clean the blood, but red foods move the blood. Red foods are very good for the skin. Now we have raspberries. Berries, berries, berries. Now, I was telling the people what I do every single day. I have a salad every day starting this year. Before then, I try to have a salad 80% of my life. But berries are something that you want to consume on a daily basis. So the big question is frozen berries okay? Now, I buy a lot of frozen berries, but I put those in my smoothies. And sometimes I will pour them over this combination. You know, you want to be able to chew your food. So there's a difference between drinking a berry and chewing a berry. That's a whole nother topic and story, but just keep that in mind. It's great as we're starting out, when you're detoxifying the body, when you're doing that juice fasting, and what you're doing is trying to get your body healed into a state of balance so that you can start consuming your foods more. And whole apple 10 days every day out of the week is better than drinking apple juice. You know, but depending on where you are and what's going on, that might be what you need to do initially. But we want to try and consume fresh berries every day. Blackberries, blueberries, these are dark blue in color. They're very good for the mind, the spirit. You know, when you find yourself agitated, when your brain doesn't seem like it's working that well, don't know where your car keys are. Blueberries are the things that go right to that part of the system. So we have blackberries, raspberries, blueberries. When you're getting berries, strawberries are extremely good for the skin. Now, the thing that makes raspberries so popular is they have 1 million little yellow seeds in them. The more seeds that something has in it, the better it's going to be for you in terms of the fiber content. So we want dietary fiber, soluble, insoluble fiber. I'm just trying to see whether or not this bowl is too small. Okay, so we have our berries sitting on top of our bananas. Just kind of want to scoop that and mix it up before you put the other things into it so that stuff is not falling all over the place. So there you have it. So consuming these berries are going to give you lots of minerals and vitamins, a ton of antioxidants. This is health in a nutshell, really. Just consuming berries every day, because you're dealing with that fiber. You're dealing with keeping your colon clean and healthy. You're dealing with a variety of colors, which is always good, which means you're getting a variety of minerals and vitamins. Then I sprinkle it with walnuts. One of my favorite nuts. The walnut is shaped like the lung and the brain. It's good for the lungs and the brain. Excellent source of fat. that the body can actually assimilate. And then we have cashews. I love raw cashews. And then we have raw almonds. Almond is notoriously known as the king of the nut kingdom. So we put our little nuts in there. And then here's the key. So the grounded flax seeds. So flax seeds, 3 to 4 tablespoons a day wouldn't be too much. And so you just simply sprinkle the grounded flax seeds over the combination. So 2-3 tablespoons of grounded flax seeds. They're going to act as a fat emulsifier, one. But the omegas that you get in there, the essentials, are so good for the lubrication of the joints. But then in terms of the fiber and moving your bowels, that is what you want to do. The grounded flax seeds. This is colon health 101. So cover that with some grounded flax seeds. Fruit is already sweet enough, but raw honey has some excellent qualities to it. So you don't want more than a teaspoon of that, and that's optional. There is a big controversy as to whether or not honey should be consumed, even in the holistic community. You've got one on this hat that says never ingest honey. The other one's like, oh, it's great for the body, but don't ingest it. But honey, to me, is in the Bible. I leave it at that. If it's in the Bible, it's a good thing. And so that's basically your cereal. The other thing that I do at times is that I'll take steel cut oats and I'll grind them down to a flour, just like you take your flax seeds. We go through a lot of flax seeds. I'm actually doing a dish for a couple of people. That's why I have all of these grounded. Typically, you don't want to grind more than 3 or 4 cups of flax seeds at a time because they go rancid very quickly and you can't detect it with the human eye, which is why you never want to buy ground flax seeds out of the store. You have no idea how long they've been there, except they've been there very long. So you just grind down maybe 2 to 3 cups per week, utilizing 3 to 4 tablespoons a day. I pour them over my cereal in the morning. I pour them over my salad in the evenings. And that's going to be excellent for your gut health. Just can't go into, and when they're whole, they're not going to be able to do what they need to do internally. I will use whole flax seeds in the combination with grounded flax seeds to give some raw crackers some texture or something like that. But in terms of being able to actually digest it and assimilate it in the body, it's not going to do anything in the whole form. That's why you want to grind them down to a powder. And do the same thing with steel cut oats. Steel cut oats, one of the pastors called me yesterday. She's going through menopause. I was like, steel cut oats, grind it down to a flour. You'll never have a hot flash again. But in addition to that, steel cut oats. So everything you think you're getting from oatmeal, especially cooked oatmeal, you'll get it from the raw steel cut oats. And when you grind them down to a flour, now they're able to be assimilated by the body. And so I usually pour that on top. I'm eating this evening, so I don't really want any flour tonight. And then here's key number 2. Talked about seeds and how important the seed is to the body. And with us studying the Bible, the seed, we're predicated on the seed. So for us, it should be very important. But look at the millions of seeds. These are black Turkish figs. So those millions of little yellow seeds that you see in there makes this categorized as a yellow food. So black mission figs, though they're black in color, they're considered to be a yellow food. And we talked about green foods cleaning the blood, red foods moving the blood, yellow foods are natural laxatives. Natural laxatives. And so what do we want? We want to naturally be able to have whatever we're consuming leave our body between 14 and 16 hours after consumption. Otherwise, we're opening up a breeding ground for parasites, okay? An incubator, so to speak. So we have the black mission figs and the calamari Turkish figs, both of which are filled with little yellow seeds, which make them excellent for dietary fiber, and then a ton of other minerals and vitamins that are in figs. Figs are very biblical. And you talk about the wilted fig tree and the other parables with the fig tree. But figs are really, really like one of the best things you can do. Children love figs. I give them the figs and they're like shocked because it tastes like sugar. It's one of the sweetest things in the world. So as you're trying to transition your kid from bouncing off the walls, take that white sugar out of their diet and replace it with figs. And then finally, I have some chopped up, or sliced up, I should say, dates. Dates too give it that sweet taste. That's why you really don't need the honey. But more importantly, dates have so many minerals in them that you just can't go wrong. Magnesium, copper, all the things that are hard to get from regular foods. So you have your cereal. You could actually just pour a quarter cup of water on this because you have the berries that are in there. You have the ripened bananas. You're going to have enough moisture that you could just eat this like this. This makes an incredible dessert dish. If you're training like I am, you got heavy workouts, you want to stay on a tennis court for 2 or 3 hours, this is what we call sustainable food. Someone asked me the other day, so what does that mean? Sustainable food means that your energy levels will be sustained about as long as you need them to be sustained. I have this ice cream maker, so but I don't eat these bananas in the next couple of days because it's getting warmer. They're going to get to a point where they're going to be like really like wine. So in another day or so, I will probably take these out of the pilling and put them into a Ziploc bag and put them into the freezer. And then I can run them through this little magical ice cream maker and have me real banana ice cream with absolutely no additives, no nothing else that you can't pronounce, no 1 or 2 ingredients, just frozen bananas. And they're so sweet because the ripened banana goes into a complex sugar, which is just, that's what it does. So now you can take the frozen bananas and put that over this in, on a hot summer evening, and you have dessert for your guests, and people really like that. Or you can do it in the morning for your breakfast. What I typically do, because I'm always trying to take things to the next level, is I keep raw juice on a regular basis. So this is pineapple, because pineapple has a natural enzyme bromelain, which is great for inflammation. So for those of you who are training a lot, you get a lot of inflammation, this really helps keep inflammation at bay. And then it also has fresh ginger in it. Ginger is excellent for the stomach. And I have some raw honey in it as well, because honey has a ton of medicinal properties for the gastrointestinal system. So I will usually take about a quarter cup of this and pour it onto the mixture, and then that just really is making my body have to work overtime because of all the different things that are going on. But they're all in the same family for the most part. But that will help to clean your system, move your bowels, keep things out of you that shouldn't belong in there. Or sometimes my favorite is just simply taking pomegranate juice and pouring a half a cup or so on the pomegranate juice. I think in the clip that I showed you on the Facebook page yesterday, it had the pineapple ginger honey juice poured over it. So there you have it, making the decision and the reality check for going from not being healthy to healthy, determining how we begin to get there. Here's a great starting point for you, because at the end of the day, fruits are cleansers. They're body cleansers. Vegetables go back and restore the mineral content to the body, but this is what helps clean the system out. When you start consuming lots of fruits on a daily basis, you'll find that a lot of that gut health will become healthy. A lot of that extra weight that we're carrying there will disappear. Your energy levels will be through the roof. Your skin will clear up. Just clarity will come. You'll come out of the fog. So that's a good way to transition from where we don't want to be to where we want to go in a very simplistic manner, in a very, what I think is a easy, simple, and very economical thing to do. So I know that was a little long, but it's like 2 lectures in one. So I was trying to figure out, how can I make this go 30 minutes? But when you're talking about food, that's how we get to that point. It's just like when Jesus was the carpenter, and you come in and people have this problem, the leg fell off of this, or this house needs to be built like this. That is experience. And once you get to that point where you're consuming things and you learn this and you learn that, it's kind of difficult to just give you a recipe. I mean, what if I would have said, okay, here's the recipe, and you didn't know any of the rest of that stuff? Then you wouldn't be able to be flexible and make the adaptations. Like, you don't need all of these ingredients in here. You might just be in a fog and you'd be like, oh, that woman said blue foods. Let me just get a bunch of blueberries, and I really need to clean out my colon, so let me focus on the blueberries and the raspberries. You don't have to go to the store and get raspberries, blueberries, strawberries, and blackberries if you don't want to. You can use 1, 2, or all 4 of them. You don't need the raw honey, because I just said that dates are Dates by them singly are the sweetest thing on the planet, and then figs taste like sugar. Do I need black figs and Turkish figs? Not really. Do I even need the banana? Some people absolutely can't stand the way bananas taste. You don't need the banana if you don't want to. So, but I always say the more variety you have, you're covering a lot of bullet points. So one or two of those items, whatever you have in your kitchen, a lot of times I prepare things based on what's going bad. So like I'm sitting here talking to you, so obviously I'm going to be making some guacamole in a couple of hours. So I hope that's been helpful. In 2 weeks we will be moving along to the next passage, and we'll go from there. Hope that you will try this at least once or twice before then. Take care.